Let's talk about savings. Now, I love to spend money, but I read an article the other day that said that more than 45% of Australians don't have enough money to fund an unexpected expense of $1,000 or more. And 33% of those people would then have to borrow more money to be able to fund these expenses. And as we all know, this can add up significantly with the amount of interest that you could pay over the loan term. So with this, it's pretty obvious we don't save enough money. So in this video, I'm going to run through some tips which I think will really help with both the mentality and creating good habits around saving. Let's go! So when it comes to saving more, you really have two options. You can focus on cutting costs or spending less, or you can just focus on increasing your overall income. So when we look at cutting costs, we can usually see some immediate results by reducing expenses such as takeout, traveling, or canceling those subscription services that we don't use. But when we look at increasing our income, it usually takes a bit longer before we start to see a major impact, as this usually means you need to upskill or become more marketable to your clients or your employer to show that you should be paid more for your time and your efforts. Now, depending on your goals, some would argue that cutting costs is the best place to start when it comes to saving more money. Yes, upskilling can take some time, but one of the main reasons we don't consider is tax. Let's say you have a goal of saving an extra $50 a week. If we look at reducing your expenses, it's simple. Cutting costs by $50 a week would mean that you can hold on to all of that money that you take. Now, let's just say you have a job that pays $25 an hour. If you work a 2-hour shift, you would then be paid $50. But we have to factor in tax. So if you're on a tax bracket of 32%, your take-home pay would actually be $34. So in order for you to take home the amount that you're after, you would need to work approximately 3 hours, which would pay you $75. And then after taxes, that leaves you with the $50 that you're able to save. See, the other reason why I would argue that cutting costs is the better way to go is due to lifestyle inflation. Tell me if this has happened to you. So you graduate from school and you get your first full-time job earning a salary of $50,000 a year. You work really hard, and after a year you get a promotion, which comes with a salary increase to $80,000 a year. And as a result, you decide to treat yourself and buy a new car, or go and get more takeout, or buy fancier clothes. And after another couple of years, an even bigger promotion comes along, which sees you earning $130,000 a year. And now that you can afford it, you go on bigger holidays, you trade in that old car for a new Mercedes, you get a bigger house, and you eat at fancier restaurants. So you've basically gone from living on $50,000 a year to probably saving the same amount now on $130,000 income, all because your level of expenses are increasing with your lifestyle. And in order to avoid falling into this trap, it's really important to create a good mentality around being a saver rather than a spender. And this is so that when your income does increase, you're not continually increasing your income with your expenses. So before I go on to the tips on how you can create good spending habits, I want you to ask yourself, why? Now, especially if you are generally someone who is a big spender in comparison to the income that they earn, you'll need to find something that's motivating and compelling enough to keep you on track. Now, for me, I want to be able to take my family on an overseas holiday next year. This is something that's really important to me. And if I'm deciding between spending extra money on something that I want but may not necessarily need, if I think back to my why, it really makes that decision-making process a lot easier. So let me know in the comment section below, what is your why? So tip 1, look at your spending for the past 3 months. So research has found that we are terrible at estimating our expenses. So if you have a savings plan that doesn't take into account what you're actually spending right now, is bound to fail. So run through your bank statements, your recent transactions or bills, write down and categorize what you've spent over the last 3 months. I know I've done this in the past, and I generally think that I'm a pretty good saver, but I've been surprised to find that I've been paying for subscription services that I've completely forgotten about, or that I'm eating a lot more takeout than I thought I was. Now, I am certain that by doing this, you will find an extra $50 a week somewhere. So tip 2, pay yourself first. Now, this is a really important step when it comes to the mentality of saving, especially for someone who is living paycheck to paycheck. You have a lot of bills each month, but the most important one is paying yourself. So this is something that a lot of people usually forget about and just try and squeeze in at the end of the month after all their expenses. But they find that they're left empty-handed because they've overspent. Now, here's a quick tip. Set up an automatic transfer in your bank account that automatically does this after each pay, and you won't even notice it. Tip 3, build a budget. Now, it's really important to understand that everyone is different when it comes to budgeting, and what works for me might not necessarily work for you. Now, I'll keep this bit short as I could do an entire video just on different budgeting strategies, but one of the most well-known ones out there is known as the 70-30 rule. And this is where you would typically aim for having 70% of your income allocated to your expenses and 30% allocated towards saving or investing. Now, another method that is a little bit old school but can have a massive impact is known as the cash envelope system. This is where you would withdraw your cash needed for your expenses. You divvy that up into different envelopes and you can pull money out when your expenses are due. And once all that money is gone, you know that you've run through your allocated budget for that category. Now, this is a little outdated given the environment that we're in, but you can 100% apply this to your online banking. Once your pay comes in, just set up automatic transfers to different bank accounts listed as categories. And once the bank account for that category runs down to zero, you know that you've spent your allocated amount for that month. So tip 4, review and tweak your budget as much as possible. Circumstances change, our priorities shift, we change jobs, we have children. Make an appointment with yourself every couple of months just to sit down with your budget and make sure that you are working towards those goals. And if you've got the numbers already plugged into a program or a website or a spreadsheet, it is really easy to be able to play around with these categories and create extra room where you can.